Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because we have somebody on the show today who is one of those people that has the ability to probably change the world. And that's right. You know, we oftentimes we say that in jest, right? But I truly believe that today is the time and the opportunity for us to stand up, listen, and take action with what we're going to learn today. Edward Marshall was born in Cleveland, Ohio, the son and grandson of engineers, but grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, which he calls home. Now he lives in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, with his wife and best friend, Julie, a retired teacher, and 2 of his 3 millennial sons who are in the healthcare and Habitat for Humanity. Edward's life work in collaboration was shaped by several formative experiences early in his life, surviving polio at age 1, being moved 23 times in 18 years, and growing up in a dysfunctional family where his father's need for power and control resulted in Edward's lifelong commitment to lifting others up and empowering them to be their best selves. At first, he did his work in India with the Ford Foundation in healthcare. Then it was working with low-income and minority community economic development corporations in job creation, then helping minority junior high school students in rural North Carolina get a leg up on life by motivating them to want to go to college. Edward then started working in industry where he empowered workers in a wide range of companies on 5 continents, helping them to learn how to work collaboratively. He has coached executives to become more self-aware and effective as collaborative leaders, and now is equipping graduate students at Duke with the collaborative leadership skills they need to be successful and help save our planet. How did he come to focus on collaboration? In 1989, he was challenged by his sponsor, Steve Miller at DuPont, to find a way to replace hierarchy with another approach to leadership based on people and principle. He said, "If you don't like command and control, what are you going to put in its place?" Edward told him collaboration was the alternative. Steve's response, "Great. Now, how are you actually going to implement it?" Edward has dedicated his entire professional life to answering that question, with over 3 decades of development, implementation, and improvement of what became the award-winning collaborative method. He now can say there is a STEM to STERN replacement for hierarchy collaboration. His book, Leadership's Fourth Evolution, Collaboration for the 21st Century, not only articulates the theory of collaboration, but also provides leaders a handbook for how to implement it at the individual, team, organization, and global levels. This last of 3 books on collaboration represents the work of thousands of leaders and managers in Fortune 500 and many other companies who wanted a better way to work and one that is grounded in principle and focused on building high trust work cultures. Collaboration is about creating workplaces that empower the human spirit. Edward's legacy is more than the award he received from the Association for Talent Development or the Lifetime Top 15 Trust Thought Leader Award from Trust Across America or best-selling books or 23 years writing his In the Workplace column for American Cities business journals. His legacy is the creation of a comprehensive replacement for 20th century hierarchy collaboration. His most important legacy, however, is the hundreds of thousands of people whose work lives have been transformed by realizing their own power, that they matter, have a right to be respected, and that they can create trust-based workplaces fit for the human spirit. Dr. Edward M. Marshall, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I certainly am. It's a privilege to be here, Jim.
Well, I can tell you that I'm quite honored, and I've given my Legion a little bit about you. But if you could, please share with us how what you're going to share today is going to improve the customer experience.
The most important thing, Jim, I think, is, having worked with customers my entire life as a small businessman and as a consultant, you've got to be there for them, and you got to build a high trust relationship with them. And collaboration does that. If I come into my customer relationship from that collaborative intention of really engaging them, really actively listening to them, really creating a partnership and a relationship with them where, I'm there to serve them, to provide a product or a service to them, then we're going to have a really positive relationship. If I don't trust trust is in all relationships is at the core of the national and international conversation these days, as you know. But if I don't trust the pharmaceutical company, with these vaccines to deliver me a product that is safe, then what kind of I'm not going to do it, right? And if I don't trust the Johnson and Johnson to deliver me baby powder that doesn't have asbestos in it, we've got a problem there. So I just think that it's what collaboration does is it creates ethical and trust-based relationships with the customer. When I worked with a manufacturing operation at one point where their relationship with their providers was in their supply chain was in serious jeopardy. And what we did was we created a collaborative partnership with their customers. So it wasn't adversarial, it wasn't transactional, it was collaborative. And the whole point was that we align, so not only building trust, but that we align our expectations and that we have a process of communication and engagement and accountability so they're able to get what they want and we're able to provide them that the company is able to provide them what they needed. And then I think thirdly, what collaboration does is it accelerates innovation in the relationship. And if you're in this partnership where there's high trust, where there is engagement and ownership and communication, then there's greater psychological safety in that relationship, greater ownership of what the common engagement is about, and that is going to then result in greater potential for risk taking and therefore profitability for both companies.
Well, as you're talking, I often hear Dr. Robert Cialdini, who is known as the godfather of persuasion and influence, and he for a long time was a professor at Arizona State University, and I've been certified in his system and all of that. He talks about a couple things that are associated with professors and theorists and all that, and actually practically applying and making things happen. And he's saying, like, look, if we're academics, all we have to do is just tell you that, hey, this is going to work. We don't have to worry about actually proving it out and all of that. And
right.
So for some of us, what you're saying is like, of course, right? This is like a no-brainer. It makes sense. But I think maybe we can learn a little bit something from geese to help us understand this a little bit better. So what can we learn from geese?
Well, when you see a flock of geese flying in formation, I use this in the book as it's actually the beginning of the book because we have a lot to learn from them. So when they're flying in formation, there's of course a head goose, right? And they're all honking, right? So that's encouragement and that's support. And they're flying in a V formation because they're flying on the lift of the wings of the other geese. And they're actually, I think they're 47% more productive or more effective, fly faster because they are in that formation. So, there's synergy and they're working together as a unit for the benefit, for the collective of all of the geese. It's not about individual geese just flying off and doing their own thing. Well, when one of the geese gets injured, two geese fly down with them until to make sure that they're taken care of. Well, that's nurturing and support and acknowledging and respecting, the goose that's injured and wanting to make sure that they're taken care of and can get back into the flock. I think the other thing is that leadership is rotated. It's not about one person being the leader all of the time. So when the head goose gets tired, they'll fall to the back of the formation and another goose takes its place. And in collaboration, I talk a lot about with my clients as well as with my students to rotate the responsibility of facilitator within the group. So what you do in that kind of a process is everybody gets the opportunity to lead in the sense of listening to and engaging and facilitating the group to come to a result. So there are a lot of lessons that we have from geese. There's another one from wolves, but I won't go there right now.
Important context, right? Because there's no judgment there, right? It's just you take care of one another and you work together and judgment free to be able to get to something that we're going to talk about a little bit later, which to me is I'm looking to get some more insight into, and you talk about 100% true consensus, and we're going to get some detail on that. But in order to build up to really get us to where we're talking about making some impact and changing the world and really making some differences in where we are today and getting to that fourth evolution, we kind of have to understand what came prior. And so it's important for us to know and understand who is Frederick Winslow Taylor, who is Douglas McGregor, and then who is Stephen Covey. If you could give us a little bit of understanding.
Yeah, so we're talking about the first three evolutions of leadership. So if we go back to 20th century industrial revolution, right, around 1910, 1920, Frederick Winslow Taylor was an industrial engineer who is well known for his going around with a clipboard and a stopwatch and kind of measuring what people were doing. But he articulated the theory of scientific management. And it really is the root of, along with Max Weber, but scientific management is really the root of what I call the power paradigm. And the power paradigm, which even is prevalent today, is the most prevalent format for how we lead and manage in organizations, which I'll get to in a second. But that approach assumed that management assumed that the workers were indolent and lazy and really didn't want to be there and had to be incented or punished in order to be able to get them to work. Well, the consequence of that was the labor unions that organized in the 20s and 30s with riots and many other things that were, they wanted to be treated more like human beings. Well, there was some really important research that was done at Western Electric in the 30s by Roethlisberger and others. And these experiments showed that it was called the Hawthorne Effect, basically showed that, so there are all these workers in this lab and they start turning the lights down and productivity went up. And then they turned the lights back up and then they started cooling the place off and heating the place up. And all this productivity kept going up and they were scratching their heads trying to figure out why is that? And the reason is that they were being paid attention to. They were being acknowledged and appreciated for what they were doing. And that led to what Douglas McGregor did in the human side of enterprise, really was groundbreaking in 1960. And he was a professor at MIT, and he had a lab there and he was doing his work. But basically what McGregor said was, look, we've got all this research. We understand that there are anomalies in this power paradigm and in the Taylor method. And that people work in groups. They we're social. We want to have a way to work with each other in teams. And so he really focused in on the psychosocial aspects of interpersonal relations and in organizations and the people were not lazy and dumb, that we were actually responsible. We wanted to work hard. We wanted to succeed. So kind of roll forward to, 1990, when Stephen Covey, well known for his book on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, wrote another book the year later in 1980, well, it was 89, 90, called Principle-Centered Leadership. And basically what he argued was, and this was, to me, the third evolution, because we were going from power to people to principle. And he said, look, we can't just lead by ordering and commanding people to do things. That compliance doesn't work as a way of really getting the productive energy out of the workforce. So we need to lead by principle. Well, I actually worked with Stephen Covey's brother when I was doing some work with Conoco. We had some fascinating conversations about the relationship between the collaborative work ethic, which I was developing at the time, and the 7 habits of highly effective people. And I went through his course and all of that. But there was a great deal of alignment, and I didn't realize at the time that a few years later, I would be writing my first book, The Power of the Collaborative Workplace, Transforming the Way We Work, and really kind of built this model together. So I was taking McGregor's work plus Covey's work, recognizing from my own consulting experience in working with people and a kind of roll up your sleeves, dirt on the fingernails approach. What do you need in order to be able to work better? And how are we actually going to do this from a practical and applied standpoint? I came up with this notion of creating a team-based organization in the early 90s in my work with DuPont and Conoco. And it wasn't, what I saw was that people were empowered by this approach and creating a collaborative team. And we'll talk about true consensus in a minute, but that people take care of what they own. And when they could own how they were going to work together as a team, regardless of their status or power or whatever, their title, things got better. They felt better about themselves. Their productive energy went up. We began producing outstanding results, and their lives were transformed. I mean, I'll never forget at DuPont, there were these guys who'd been working next to each other in cubicles for 15 years, didn't know a thing about each other, right? There had been births and deaths and marriages and babies born. And when we got together as a collaborative team, all of a sudden, we released all of that energy. The walls came down, literally. They began interacting with each other around stuff that really mattered to them. And as a result of that, that team produced phenomenal results. In that case, which was really at the core, the beginning of the collaborative method, what I learned so much from that was that when I left that organization, we all sat down and I said, okay, we're done. And they said, no, we're just beginning. I said, okay, that's great. Who's your leader? To your point around leadership, who's your leader? The geese. And he said, we are the leader. We are the leader. Because, when we get into a pinch, we know that Jeff is going to ask the right question that we need to be answering. When we're feeling down, we know that Harry is going to crack a joke and make us feel better about ourselves. And they went around the room, and every single one of them had a gift that they were giving to the team. From that, I learned about situational leadership. Then into a collaborative organization, it's not like we have one person at the top. It's not take me to your leader. It's like everybody has an opportunity to lead at some point, depending upon their skill sets and depending upon the situation. And so it's the geese, right? It's like at a certain point in time, we're going to rotate that leadership to the person who really has the skills. I use Eugene Kranz and Apollo 13 as a case study. And there, it's like when they're saving Apollo 13, they had to rely upon the electrical engineer, not Kranz. They had to rely upon the electrical engineer who knew where everything was. And at a different point in time, it was Capcom, right? So it's just, I think if we can realize in our organization and working with our customers that we all have a gift to give, that we all want to succeed, that we all want to, have a winning solution, that we respect each other. We can build that trust, and the result of that, it will be outstanding results.
Well, when you're saying that, I start thinking about, the work of Taylor and McGregor and Covey, and, you talk about the collaborative piece. Again, I'm sitting there saying, yeah, okay, no brainer. It makes sense. I mean, but it's like, well, why it doesn't have to be the fourth evolution, and why right now?
Why right now? Well, Jim, I think we all know this. So I'm not saying anything that is profound here. But I think it's important to say we are at an inflection point, a transformative moment in this country, and I think in this world, for a lot of reasons. The most obvious one is COVID-19. We just passed 25 million infections and well over 400,000 deaths, and with no end in sight. And just today, new variants. We don't know if the vaccine is going to work against the new variants coming in from the UK, and it's much more deadly than we thought. So, we're in this for quite some time. We've got, the economic consequences associated with that. Millions and millions of people are on the edge of losing their homes, losing their health benefits. There are people in lines that are, for waiting in line for hours for food, et cetera, et cetera. We've got a long list of things, of woes, but we need to restructure our economy so people can get back to work. We have the racial inequities that we learned about this last summer that have been present for 250 years. I'm reading Isabel Wilkerson's book on caste, a book I would recommend everyone read. It's just phenomenal to really understand the root causes of where our structural racism comes from. And we have climate change. We have 9 years left to actually, according to the International Protocol panel on climate change, we have about a year or two to make the critical decisions needed to get ourselves to net zero carbon emissions well before 2030. We're not on path to do that. We're at 1.2 degrees centigrade above industrial levels and rising. So we have a desperate need for collaboration on all of these fronts. And in terms of if we can begin to do that in our customer relationships, in our team relationships, in our organizations, and we can begin to operate at a level of ethics above reproach is what I preach and teach and practice, then I think we may have a shot at it. But that's the context I think that we're living in terms of that. And so if we put leadership, let's put that into the context, an umbrella over the leadership context. We have about 95% of organizations, is my rough estimate, it's not scientific, of organizations today still have all of these levels of hierarchy and all of these silos where people aren't speaking with each other. And we have all of the politics. I mean, I dealt with it for 40 years in my consulting business. It's not going to go away easily. Well, that's the power paradigm. That's Taylor today, right? It's 20th century industrial management in the 21st century digital age. Well, now we've got 65, 75% of the global workforce is millennial and Gen Z. They don't want to work in that kind of a culture. And my friend Rob Cook at the University of Illinois did some fantastic work statistically proving in a sample of well over 4 million people all around the world over 40 years that 95% of the people want to work in a collaborative, constructive culture. So there's a fundamental mismatch between where we are and where we want to be. And so this book is designed, this methodology, this theory of collaboration can help us make the transition in this critical moment from the power paradigm to the collaboration paradigm.
Well, as you're sitting there and you're going through all of this, I mean, for me, I start thinking about the daunting nature of it all. And then all these different elements. But even so, when you start also talking about the proliferation, 95% of organizations, for me, because I've had this discussion before, start going back to our Prussian school system that is, the Prussian school system was built because of Taylorism. I mean, it was, how do you create a better factory worker that's more obedient and compliant?
That's right.
I'm hearing my kids talk about the things that they're doing in school, which is, a school that's supposed to be thinking about differentiated learning and preparing, a better human being for the future. It's like, I don't see much change.
That's right. Yeah. And, it has to start in here, right? So at the individual level, I talk about the collaborative leadership journey, that if we make a conscious choice, if we really want to change the world, if we want to survive, because I'm telling you, Jim, I've done the research on climate, and some people say we're already cooked. I am hopeful, but if we do not start working with the global leaders around the world, and if we don't start achieving sustainability and work in our businesses and in our relationships and in home, we're done. We're cooked. So we have the fierce urgency of now to teach this next generation how to work with each other differently. And so it starts in here. I've got to look at my own values, my own ethics, my own choices to how I'm going to lead. Then let's look at the team. All right, so I created the collaborative team governance process. And what this is to get at the whole point around, 100% true consensus. What I learned was that, it's like a basketball team. If you've got 5 all-star McDonald players on your team, like we sometimes do at Chapel Hill, terrible team this year, but, and they're all playing by their own rules, then, they're not going to have much of a team. So we have to be working, and most corporate teams do not have a governance process. And so they do storming, forming, norming, whatever, what my clients used to call is storming, non-performing, right? And so then somebody has to jump in and drive the process. Well, then you're back into the power paradigm. So I front load a team with this governance process to create operating agreements by 100% true consensus, no reservations, so that they all own the agreements. And what happens in that process, because of that 100% true consensus, no reservations, is they have to work through their differences with each other. So it's not about consensus, it's about how we manage dissensus in our relationships. How do we manage disagreements and difficult conversations with each other? And that's how we can, I think, in this transformative moment, begin to build unity, begin to build some sense of we're in this together, because we all own this team. We all own this mission of this company. We all own this problem of climate change, et cetera. So there are mechanics to the 100% true consensus, no reservations. I could go there, but I think the main point is that as I teach my students and as I've worked with hundreds of teams, people always say, well, we can't do that. Let's just go along to get along. Let's just do majority rule. And I just say, well, if you do that, here's what's going to happen. Let's say you've got 10 people on your team. And the first decision, 2 people disagree. The second team, two other people disagree. Third decision, and so you go around the room. I said, what do you got now? Say, no team. I said, that's right. So where it counts, where it really matters, where your corporate life or your team life or your project success depends on it, make sure everybody's on the same page and agrees. And if you have a disagreement, what I've seen is amazing changes in decision-making improved changes in decision making because they listened to the center. It's not about might make right. It's about we're all in this together. So let's make sure we're all on the same page and not speed bump each other.
Well, and as you're saying that, I start thinking about all these human dynamics and factors. And heck, we don't have to look at, and you even said it right now. Now, if you start focusing a little bit differently, I mean, just look at the whole duopoly that we have in the U.S. government system in regards to Republicans and Democrats. I mean, we have all these role models. We have social media where we, attack. It's shoot, shoot, shoot. All of that. I mean, when I start looking at all of these, what have become social norms, I'm like, how do we prevent? Okay, yes, we're going to agree to the 100% true consensus, and then if something does essentially get rolled out, whatever the case may be, implemented, and it fails, do we prevent that one person from saying, I knew it, and I knew? I mean, how do you keep that from coming in?
Well, by doing this front-loaded process, because what happens when they all agree to their decision-making agreement, to how they're going to handle disagreements, how they're going to handle communications, how they're going to be responsible for themselves and each other, how they're going to hold each other accountable, etc. There are like 14 different operating agreements. Most teams usually need only about 10. But when they all agree to that, there's nobody saying, I told you so. Now, if you go with can live with consensus, which is a misnomer, there is no such thing as can live with consensus, but it might be 90%. You go with that one dissenter, you can have one dissenter on every team. Then you end up with that, I told you so, you just didn't listen to me. And what it builds is distrust within the group. And that seed of distrust then moves to the next person or to the next person. And within a matter of 6 months to 9 months to a year, you just don't have the group dynamic anymore. So what I've been able to prove is that this method of building a team and applying it to organizational change so that the workforce actually owns the change, because 75% of change processes fail. I've been able to demonstrate with 90% of change processes succeeding because the workforce owns the change process. They participate. I did it at Marriott, did it at DuPont, did it at Conoco. I've done it in a wide variety of companies, Stylecrest up in Ohio. When people take care of what they own. If they don't, they don't wash rented cars. And so we've got to create, if we're going to survive in this future, every single company is going to survive. We've got to learn how to do this. This book is, a compilation of my life's work. And so it's a handbook. So if you go into chapter 7, you'll learn how to do a collaborative team. If you go into chapter 8 and 9, you're going to learn how to do organizational change. If you go into chapters 4 and 5, you'll learn how to, do the individual, the leadership journey. So it's designed to be not only a new theory of collaboration, but also a handbook for how to do it.
And I think that's a really important point. I mean, this thing is you can say it's a monster. Well, we're talking about monster work, right?
Yep. Yeah. This is the word. This shift from power to collaboration, from the industrial age to the digital age, is the work of our time. And I figure it's going to take another, 30, 40, 50 years. But that's why I am teaching the next generation of leaders. That's why I wrote this for the next generation of leaders, because they are the ones that are going to make the difference in this planet. And I am so hopeful. I mean, I love my engineers, and they are just full of energy and vim and vigor and excitement and want to discover and, let's make stuff happen. And that is what I'm counting on. I'm counting on the next generation really being able to lift us up and to make this transition.
Well, and we've talked about some of the challenges that exist, and there are many. You actually bring out 5 key collaborative team challenges, and they are being in a complex organization. And when we say organization, you can just put that in your context, right? And it could be everything from, government to nonprofit to small org to medium, large org. working across silos, cultural islands, maintaining team trust, and then working globally and virtually. So if you could kind of give us some insight into those.
Well, the most important one is people working across silos. We throw up walls functionally. We throw up walls culturally across countries, across time zones. We have all kinds of barriers that we have erected. And the power paradigm has erected those for reasons I understand in terms of functional specialization and, but what we need to do is we need to take those walls down. What I've learned in my career, my professional career in the workplace, was that, people in the front line, they get along with each other because they have to, and they don't mind reaching across the walls, right? But as you move up the organization, those walls become firmer and firmer, and we have to protect and defend our territory. Well, Desmond Morris wrote a book called The Animal Imperative, and that it's it's just, we can continue to do that. But what happens is we have breakdowns in terms of the work. I worked in a high-tech company out in Silicon Valley where I was trying to build cross-functional collaboration. They had worked with each other for 10 years and virtually, right? They're on the same campus, throwing brickbats at each other and blaming each other, doing this because, they weren't getting the product that they needed at the end, which was a test bed. And when we got them all in a room, we found not only that they liked each other, and as we went through governance, but we found $6.5 million in stranded assets on the first day, simply because they were talking with each other. And then we were able to take 35% out of the supply out of the process in terms of cost reduction, simply by people talking with each other. It's exactly what I was talking about the manufacturing operation before, where the company and the customer actually speak with each other rather than having it be transactional. So I think in terms of silos, the same applies to complex organizations where we're working across boundaries globally, and we have all kinds of barriers that we erect, either whether it's cultural or whether it's legal or whether it's interpersonal, and we have to break those walls down as well. All of my teams at Pratt, at the Pratt School of Engineering, are cross-functional or cross-national teams, so that we learn how to work with each other, different languages. Same thing virtually. All of our teams now are working virtually. Our Chinese students are still in China. I have a student in Germany. I have a student in France and Paraguay. And so, we have to learn how to work this way, especially in this COVID environment, because that's how it's going to be for a while. So collaboration becomes a leveling effect. I mean, just look at Zoom. As I like to tell people, all the boxes are the same size. It is an action-forcing event to have us treat each other as equals, as human beings. Sometimes we have cats and dogs in the background, right? But we're all having a conversation about things that matter, and we're focused on our relationship with each other. So collaboration becomes a culture, if you will, a leadership culture within which we can do amazing things by learning how to work with each other differently.
Okay, so when I start thinking about this transformation process and what you started out with talking about this timeline, just in regards to, climate and culture change, you talked about, and the data showing that, we have a certain window in timeline, otherwise we've gone too far. But then you also talked about this transformation process over the next 30, 40, 50 years. I don't see those dissecting. I don't see us making an impact. Are we just doomed?
I would never say that. But I would say that, based upon the existential threat that we face from climate change, that if we do not start dealing with each other differently globally, and if we don't start meeting some targets instead of just talking about the targets within the next 9 years, then we are. If we hit 3 degrees, we're on track to hit 3 degrees above industrial age levels. So think the melting of the permafrost in Siberia. Think the piece of Antarctica that just broke off and is headed towards the island of George Island, I think it is, off of Argentina, the size of Florida. Think the burning of Australia this last summer, or California. We now have fires in California in January. Coming from California, we've never had fires in January. So, yeah, I'd say we're the frog in the pot, and the temperature is rising. And so, if we don't act now, we're in serious trouble. There won't be a planet to collaborate on in 50 years or 100 years.
So when we start talking about making impact at the type of level that you're talking about, give us some insights on how your work and what you're bringing forth is going to essentially make that impact sooner than later.
I'd say if we are able to do our individual work and take our commitment, our conscious choice to start leading collaboratively and bring that into our organizations, in our teams, and apply some of the tools and methods that I provide in this book. If we do that now, and then we give our workforces ownership over the mission and values and strategy of the company, and over their own jobs, and over any changes that we have, we will begin the process of making this transition. And then we have to aggressively work with our political leaders to get them to put pressure on them, as Greta Thunberg has been doing as a 14 or 15-year-old, and create a world, give some hope to the next generation that they're going to have a world actually to live in where they can raise their children. So I think it starts in here, goes to the team, goes to the organization, goes to our communities, and then and then to the national and global level.
Well, in the Fast Leader Legion, and hopefully everybody who listens and has still yet to really catch on to this, does it quickly, and we wish you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement, along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Dr. Marshall, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast, and I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Dr. Marshall,
okay.
Ready to hoedown?
Yep.
All right, so what is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
It's my fear of giving talks to large groups of people, and my inability to navigate organizational politics very effectively.
And what is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Trust yourself. You are your greatest asset.
And what would be one of your best tools that you help you lead in business or life?
Well, I developed the collaborative work ethic, a series of 7 core values, and to live my life by those 7 principles, to me, is how I do it.
And what would be one book you'd recommend to our Legion? It can be from any genre.
Well, there are a couple. I just recommended Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. But I think for everyone, in addition to my book, I would encourage them to read two. One is The Leadership Challenge by James Kouzes and Barry Posner, and the other is Edgar Schein's Humble Leadership.
And we will put a link to all of those, as well as Leadership's Fourth Evolution on your show notes page. All you have to do is go to fastleader.net and do a search for Dr. Edward M. Marshall, and it'll come up for you. Okay, Dr. Marshall, this is my last Hump Day Head On question. Imagine you've been given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you can take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take it all. You can only take one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
Facilitation, because it empowers others to speak. It puts you in a position of listening and engaging, and because people then feel heard, respected, and honored. And as a result of that, there's loyalty, there's trust, there's safety, and there's hard work.
Dr. Marshall, I've had an incredible time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, for one. I'm at edward.marshall@duke.edu. I have a website, marshallgroup.com. I have a Twitter handle, which I don't use very much. But LinkedIn is probably the best way to get to me for most people, or through my email. But also, my book is on Amazon, and if anyone has, I can also send you to my publisher, where you can get a discount. So let me know.
Edward M. Marshall, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.